Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Dharmaya.
Namo Dharmaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Namah.
Namo Namah. Om. Om.
Okay, I'll just say a little bit about what we've been doing, what we're doing this month. We'll do the sort of main meditation period of the evening, a little bit more reflection, and then I'll hand over to Adityabandhu. I believe the inspiration for the meditation challenge was the 3 Peaks challenge, where you climb 3 mountains in a day. There aren't any peaks in this one, just lots of meditation, so it's not particularly similar. But I noticed everybody's doing it. Even the yoga teacher, whose YouTube videos I like, had a thing called saying the January challenge. I thought, hey, that's ours. But no, I think it's that everybody does some sort of challenge in January. So anyway, our one is to meditate every day during the month and come to the centre once a week. Come to the centre online if you can't make it in person, but that's the January meditation challenge. But we're also, if you like, for people who know the practices, we've got a theme. I think in the newcomers room their theme is learning to meditate. If you know the practices, our theme here is the 4 reminders. What those are reasons to practice. In fact, they're reasons to practice now. If you were here last week, you would have heard me say something about this. But we're going through a different one of these 4 reminders each time. So last week I talked about the preciousness of this human birth, or the preciousness of human life, depending how you look at it, but the fact that human life is an opportunity to awaken, as the text says, that we're using, in other words, to become enlightened, which is the goal of Buddhist meditation after all. So the fact that human life is precious for many reasons, but most of all for a Buddhist because it's an opportunity to gain enlightenment. Anyway, I won't steal Adityabandhu's thunder. He'll introduce reminder number 2 in the second half, so stay tuned for that. But really they're reasons to kind of link large truths that we know about, like the fact that life is precious, we know that perfectly well, with how to work on our moment-to-moment experience. Because we know that, it's easy to sort of toss off, isn't it, that life is precious or all things are impermanent or something. But what that's got to do with us and our minds now and exactly how we live our days and nights is slightly harder to do. So what we're doing with these 4 reminders is really trying to weave those together for you and show you ways you can work on your mind moment to moment that put us more in touch with that higher vision of how things are, and penetrating to how things truly are is, again, the goal of Buddhist meditation. So that's a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing, but more about the theme later. I wanted us to do a reasonable chunk of meditation first. So in a minute we'll sit for 25 or 30 minutes. We'll do the Metta bhavana, and I think I'll mainly just ring bells for the 5 stages of the Metta bhavana. So we'll do it as it's taught, and then have a little bit of time to reflect on the week and so on. But first, to settle us into the evening, but also start working on the mind a bit more concertedly, we'll do some Metta bhavana. Okay, so let's set up, get ready to do that. So we're not doing lying down this evening or a short practice to kind of tune in, we'll just go straight in. So make sure you've got what you need to be comfortable. Okay. Could you pass me a cushion?
Sorry.
It's all right. So I'll lead us in a little bit, and probably largely leave you to it. You could be thinking of who you want to put in the stages. But I'll give us plenty of time to settle into the practice, so no rush. So the first thing you want to tune into now is the body and just how it feels to be sitting here in this room now. So the day that you've had, your journey and so on. Even the thoughts that you've entertained today have left you in a particular state, and you're just tuning into that physically. So you could let your attention wander along the weighty parts of the lower body in contact with the floor and cushion. You could feel the breath entering and leaving the body. And keep moving around the body space and looking out for any gripping on that you're doing. So that might be in the belly or the shoulders or the face. You could let the shoulders soften. Relax the muscles of the face. tune into the area around the heart. Just explore sensations in the centre of the chest a bit. Is it contracted and tight, or relaxed, warm? And as we go through the Metta bhavana, you can, if it helps, imagine the heart opening. Opening especially to others. Metta bhavana. could start letting the practice itself fade or quieten now. But see if you can stay in complete stillness and just relax for another minute or so. Turn on the supply fan as well as the extract. Good, so what we will do now is talk a little bit about either the week's practice since last week, if you were here last week. So that was meditating every day at home and the gratitude journal. So if you were here for those steers, you'll talk about how that went. If you weren't, talk about how that meditation we just did now was for you. And we'll do that in pairs. Is that clear enough? So if you were here for last week, how you got on meditating every day at home, doing the gratitude journal. If you weren't, or you're new to the challenge, or you're new to the centre or anything like that, how you got on in that meditation just now. So find a partner and you will have 7 or 8 minutes to do that.
Sorry? do at the moment is what's next.
Meditation and gratitude, that's good. Sorry, I forgot to give a steer to those of you online, but as we feed back, if you're online at home, you can put something in the chat and Joe can see it and stick his hand up and tell me what it is. So, first of all, I'd be interested to hear from anybody who... Did anybody do the gratitude journey? Stick your hand up if you did that. Yeah, alright, great. So, would one of you like to tell me how you got on with that? What you noticed, what happened?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Great.
I think I do it with resistance. So normally, the night before there's resistance to actually doing the gratitude, kind of the 5 things. Sometimes I just knock it out quite quickly.
Yeah.
Even if I do, it does change the way that I kind of feel, or kind of like see,
When you do it.
When I do it, I guess it just makes me kind of scan my day a bit more.
Yeah.
Scan the people in my life.
Yeah.
Even if it's a quick one, just kind of. Yeah, it does, I guess, do something.
Great. I should have explained perhaps to anyone who wasn't here, it's just an exercise where you write down at the end of each day 5 things you're grateful for. You're, as it were, not allowed to go to sleep till you've done it. So thanks, Ruben. Do you know, did you examine the resistance at all or get any idea why you didn't want to do it at first?
I didn't examine it, no.
No? Any thoughts?
I suppose maybe maybe just the mood that I was in, I just wanted to stay in that particular mood, so I didn't want to kind of transform it. So yeah, it was probably that would be the resistance, I suppose. I didn't want to change the way I was today.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't fit our own personal agenda, does it? Well, that's what I find, that it involves opening back up to something much larger and more sort of 3-dimensional and a bit open and not so linear and to do with me getting something done or even going to sleep exactly when I want to. I mean, it's not the idea to lose that much sleep over it, but I quite often get to bed and think, oh God, now I've got to do this as well. I've done my teeth, I've done, but I think partly it's to do with, golly, now I've got to open the heart, It's sort of, I don't know, it's a different shape to everything else. It's like some huge round spherical thing, or it doesn't even have sides compared with, the linear matter of us getting to something done or staying in the mood we're in, like you say. Yeah, very interesting. Were you at the back? I think you were going to say something?
Yes, I've been doing the journal. Sometimes I do forget, like the night before, but in the morning when something like kind of gets me a bit unhappy, and then it helps me just to remember the things that went right the day before.
So you'd reread it in the morning, or do you mean you'd do the writing? Oh yeah.
Yes, read it in the morning. And sometimes I don't do it today, I just put some notes down. It helps me focus on things that have gone right.
Oh great, yeah. That's a great idea, yeah. So rereading it to give yourself a steer later, yeah. It's sort of quite a challenging fact of our day-to-day life, how much of a role our mood is playing, isn't it? How changeable that is. Now you need to do yourself favours in that regard. And by doing the gratitude journal, I think you are creating a little resource for yourself as well as doing an exercise at the time. Yeah, I find that too. I sometimes reread and it looks as though it's been written by quite an inspired person, I noticed. It's like, I'm grateful for this and so, and that guy gave you something, and you know what I mean? If it looks like, I don't know, my handwriting, but an inspired person, because you sort of have the discipline of recording those things, yeah. And were you going to say something?
Yeah,
Thank
for
you.
me it was really a changing exercise.
Yeah.
I usually complain with myself. I'm very, I look at obviously the negative things. Hope I'm not the only one. And so not forcing, but just giving space, because actually it's something nice that I have always had at the back of my hand to do something just to look at the positive, but I didn't find a way really. I was
Yeah.
almost embarrassed when I thought about the nice things. So these particular...
Embarrassed when you thought about nice things?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, do you know what you mean? Or why are you saying that?
Because if I say them out loud, especially if I say that to somebody, for example, they look smaller, much smaller than I would like to. So
smaller than what you feel about them?
yes, yeah.
Okay. They sound like a little. They sound like hardly
nothing,
anything.
What should I be happy for at the end? So actually, and it's been quite a long time that I felt that this thing needed to change somehow. So I needed to really give more value to the positive. So these particular exercise just does exactly what probably needed to be done. So yeah, it's really, really powerful.
Yeah. Good. I'd even say it is sometimes the smaller the thing or the more seemingly insignificant, the better the reflection, because you must be really training in the gratitude if that's what's happening. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Like sometimes it might be a really large thing. I think with this exercise, partly it's discipline. You're getting yourself to recognise your own gratitude for something, but partly it's got to link up with some sincere feeling. So sometimes you might find yourself thinking, golly, I've always got enough food to eat, and writing that down, and reflecting that's a huge matter. But it might be a tiny thing that's happened in the day as well, and I wouldn't say there's any difference in status between them. Like somebody at the till of a shop taking you in a little bit more, or being courteous when actually they could have just scanned your thing and charged you and looked at the next person. In a way, both of them are training the heart in just the same way. Yeah, it's a sort of training and appreciation. Yeah. What I've also found is that it feeds back. Sometimes I jot something down during the day. If I get really into the habit of this, I think, oh, that's a good one. And I jot it down while I remember it. Get one of my 5 done early. But it starts to filter back into the daily life eventually, and I actually notice more, and then eventually also become more likely to speak out my appreciation to someone. My experience has been, I've done this in bursts of some months at a time usually. I've got to be up and running for some weeks for that to start happening. It's a bit like practicing a sport or an instrument or something. Like after some weeks, I start getting into a flow, noticing things more readily, thinking more along those lines, and even speaking more accordingly. But it takes a little while. Yeah. Is that one from online? Yeah. Let's hear it. Yeah.
So there's a message here from Serene, who's online.
Oh, hello, Serene. Yeah.
She says, gratitude journaling helped me reframe my perspective. Instead of dwelling in what I do not have and the potential of losing what I do, I feel what I have is a blessing and anything I get is a bonus.
Yeah. Could you read the last bit of that again? It was good.
Instead of dwelling in what I do not have and the potential of losing what I do, I feel what I have is a blessing and anything I get is a bonus.
Wow, it's like a poem. Thanks, Serene. Yes, yeah. Yeah, I think the other thing this is really training us in is moving the bias from problems and threats and lack, actually, to abundance. Yeah, it's so problem orientated. We know that, don't we? But like I say, we know these large matters about life, and hopefully what we're doing with this challenge is giving ourselves day-to-day tools to link ourselves up with. We know we're problem orientated. We know we're often not very good at appreciating, but we need ways to get from one to the other, don't we? So I think this is a good one. Okay, so we've got a few more minutes now. Does anyone want to say how they got on with that meditation we did earlier? Slight change of subject, but maybe not a massive one. Metta bhavana.
I disobeyed the rules a little bit.
Okay.
And I did it on my family.
Okay.
But they kind of do fall into stages.
Right.
But not. It's a lot more complicated. And it was actually really interesting because at the last stage I was like sitting in a room with them. I always imagined like sitting and having a tea with people. And it was like strange because I felt like lack of metta in between the people.
Alright.
Like it was not just me trying to feel metta, it was also me trying to feel that they are happy and they feel metta toward each other. It was like a new dimension. Yeah, it was interesting.
And what happened there when you tried to imagine that metta between them as well as?
It worked after some time. Because I kind of realized that I think that if someone is happier, they tend to feel more metta and more forgiveness and more love to everyone. So when I imagine them being happy, I imagine them also feeling metta towards everyone.
Yeah, okay, good.
I think sometimes I find it a bit difficult to like sort of like generate a sort of feeling. Like I think sometimes I'm doing the Metta bhavana and I don't really feel that, you know, I'm sort of generating like love towards them. And then I remember I spoke to someone, they told me about how they did the Metta bhavana, and it was really interesting. And I kind of took what they said and like did what they were doing kind of.
And what was that?
It was like, well, my one was like, I imagine like my cat like playing with them, and like they're like my cat like instead of me having to like specifically generate love to them, I like imagine my cat like being really cute, and then their face like lighting up, being really happy. Like you just have, I just feel like animals, just everyone has to be happy like when they see them. And then that made me feel good about it, and then that opened me up more instead of directly coming from me first.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, interesting. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, there's a few things there. One is that it sounds as if what you were picturing via the cat, if you see what I mean, by deploying the cat, so to speak, is the other person in the meditation being happy.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That's the key thing there for me. And that's one way of practicing metta. If you picture your friend or the neutral person or whoever it is becoming more and more happy, even radiantly happy, you know, the imagination doesn't need to do very much for the person to sort of start appearing that way.
Yeah.
That will affect your own heart, basically. So it sounds as if that's what was happening, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So that's good. And that's one thing you can do to practice. You could just picture your friend or your enemy or whoever becoming radiantly happy, in a way that might be beyond what you've ever seen in them, if you like, because the vision of the Metta bhavana is, well, you know the third traditional phrase, may you be free from suffering. That's equivalent to enlightenment, isn't it? That's the only way to become free from suffering. And the fourth, may you make progress, means may you grow in that direction. May you actually develop the type of mind that knows how to work towards that goal. It's in a way quite specific. So I can't remember what the link was now. Anyway, as you picture then, yes, that's right. Beyond what we've observed. Sorry, I'm departing a little bit from what you said here, but I'll come back to the other point that you raised. I think the imagination can take you way beyond what you've actually observed, and that helps the practice not be a matter of fixing or addressing our present relationships. Actually, what it's to do with is the imagination trying to soar to a place where you naturally wish not just happiness, not just growth, but actually complete freedom from suffering for everybody. So I just wanted to mention the imagination as a tool there, which starts with something like visualizing somebody becoming more and more happy, more and more truly happy, if you like, which is a lovely exercise, lovely thing to sit there and do. Anyway, the other thing you mentioned, which I wanted to just touch on briefly, and then we'll need to stop for tea, is you were talking about the difficulty of generating feeling. And I know what you mean, and I think it's bound to be a difficulty if we see it in that way. So I think you'd be better off either visualising your friend being happy or imagining that metta is already there in you and can flow from you outwards to others, and simply tune into that. Because if we feel we've got to generate it, it's an enormous job and rather tiring. We're more likely to get frustrated. And in a way, it's a bit like what they say about energy in physics classes. You can't really create or destroy metta in the same way as you can't create or destroy energy. It's kind of around, and we're probably learning to direct it a bit better, or filter it a bit more, or use it a little bit more purely or less obstructedly, get out the way of it. So it sounds like actually with the cat exercise, you got out the way of something, and that was successful. So I think that's much more like it than generating a particular emotion, which we're probably bound to stumble on with, or not make. We won't come up to the mark with that. So I wanted to mention that as well. Yeah. I'm afraid actually we're out of time. I want to give us time for a cup of tea and some announcements and so on. Sorry about that. Yeah. So we'll come back in the second half to hear from Adityabandhu. Thank you.
Thanks, Prajnamanas. He's not here actually. He's feeling a bit ill, so he went upstairs. As he kind of mentioned, or Savannah Jyoti mentioned in the tea break, we'll look at this second reflection, second mind turning, which is all things pass. Yeah, so that's the title on YouTube. That's the thumbnail we'll go with. There's actually a little bit more to that reflection than just all things pass, than all things are impermanent. So you might have heard that before. One of the Pali words is anitya, which means impermanence. There's actually more. Actually, the second clause to this reflection of all things pass is that all things pass, and I must make good use of my time through practicing the Dharma. Yeah, so because things pass, there's an opportunity to live to my full potential, to practice, and so on. So all these reminders have that flavour, have the flavour of this is going to happen, but that's fine because it just reminds us that we need to turn our life towards sort of the most important values that we can that we have. And from a Buddhist perspective, that is to practice the Dharma. Yeah? So Prajnamanas also talked about weaving these reminders together in your day-to-day, in your life, really. So what does that mean? For this particular reminder, it basically means we know that all things pass. We know that all things are impermanent. That's not the problem. We need to feel that in our bones, and in the same way we need to feel that, we need to know, we need to act with urgency. We need to just feel like this might be the last, as cheesy as it sounds, and there is more to this, it might be the last day that we have. We don't know when we're going to die, we don't know how we're going to die, but we do know that we will die. So it's not news to us that things are impermanent. We know that. We need to bridge this understanding, this day-to-day understanding, to a kind of deeper understanding. And so what do we do? Like, how do we start? How do we let it all sink in? Yeah, and one way you might think off the bat is to just reflect on the fact that you are going to die, that I am going to die. You could do that, but I don't recommend it necessarily off the bat, because I've tried it and it's not. I think we might think that's good, and that's a good direct way of going about it. But if we don't have like a solid basis of positivity, of maybe some vision behind what might be after, or just some positivity, we might just end up thinking, oh God, I'm going to die, and that's a bit bleak, isn't it? So today I was thinking, how do I actually talk about death? Because it just sounds so bleak, And I think we can easily be conditioned to think that it's the end all and be all, and it, at least for me, it was sort of being brought up Catholic, my kind of psyche goes a bit grey and a bit dark blue when I think of death. But that's why I think we shouldn't just reflect on it straight away. We need some other ways of getting into it. Anyway, hopefully we can come back to that, how we can reflect on death and permanence. But I want to start with a story of in a way, the first time that I encountered death, really. Actually, someone dying close to me, and that was my grandma when I was, I don't know, actually, not that young, probably my teens. And it was, so we'd found out that she was dying, and myself and my family flew out to Portugal, where she was, and we got there. We kind of went to the hospital. We said our goodbyes, really, and she kind of held on for a few days between us knowing and getting to Portugal, and she was very close to my brother, actually. So I think there was something in there, her wanting to see the rest of her family. She's seen everyone else, basically. So we saw her, we said goodbye. It was all quite, I don't know if anyone's seen someone who's near death. It's quite a thing. You don't, it's quite strong, it's quite powerful, isn't it? Anyway, we saw her, and then we went home. On the way, we went to eat, went to a restaurant, and then we kind of forgot all about it. You have this like really intense few hours, and then you go and do something else for a little while, and you forget all about what was going on. And then we got back home, and over the last 2-3 days, I'd been a bit nervous, a bit anxious about any phone calls, because I thought, that means that's someone telling that she's passed away. But anyway, we got home, and my brother received a phone call, and that was the first time over the last few days I just didn't think anything of it. I just was like, maybe it's a call from work or something. It completely just glazed over me. And of course, that was when he was told, he was called by someone else in our family that my grandma had passed away. So, that comes to one of the reminders, actually, of this text, this Tibetan text, which is, we're the uncertainty of the time of death, yeah? So we don't know when we're going to die. Even when someone's on their deathbed, we're not always alert, we're not always aware to it. It was really stark. I completely let go of that, of her dying as a potential for just a little bit. Okay. Anyway, going on. After that, my granddad was informed that his sort of wife had died as well, and he'd found that out by my talking to my father, and it was just my father, my granddad, and myself in the room, and it was really powerful moment. You have to. I don't know, you might have been in this similar situation where two people or a few people just find something out that really, just going to change their lives. So I found that out. My granddad found that out. It was very powerful. He just couldn't quite take it in, and my dad had to repeat it to him, that his wife had passed away. So all of these things as well. They just stick to my psyche, and it will stick to all of our memories, these moments. Yeah, they're really strong. When we really can come closer to, when we really experience death particularly through people close to us, they're moments that stick, they have a meaning. So I experienced that, my dad telling my grandfather about his wife. And then after that, I stayed there in Portugal for a little while for the funeral for a couple of days after, and there was a lot of grief. Actually, there was an open casket for a few days, which is quite lovely in a way. And then after in the ceremony, it's like covered, and it was quite bleak actually. Looking back, it's like all quite grey, and the closest I got to positivity was people coming up to me and telling me about my grandma and how she'd affected their lives, and I remember the procession leading to the cemetery. It was really, really long. It was quite a small place, small village. So she'd affected a lot of people, and the only sort of positivity that I got from it that was in the air were people just coming up to me and saying how she'd affected their lives. So that was like my early experience of it, and yeah, I suppose that's one way of that we might have kind of experienced death is through our family. In a way, after I came to the LBC just last year, we had another funeral. I was around. I helped organise it. As an order member I never met. His name was Adityabandhu, and his funeral was very, very different to my grandma's. So he had an open casket. He was just there. He had an open casket. So you'd come into the shrine room, you could see him just lying there. And during the ceremony, part of the ceremony is you'd rejoice in people's merits. So a lot of friends of his would come up, a lot of people he knew, a lot of Buddhists he knew would come up and talk about his life, talk about how he'd affected them, talk about his kind of humour, positivity, his quirkiness. He was quite a quirky guy. They'd all kind of evoke him, and there'd be a much more positive kind of atmosphere, positive mood. And I don't know, it's just really very different from what I'd experienced before, and probably from what a lot of us have experienced before. And I'm saying all these things because I don't have more references than people who like sort of have died around me. What we can do, and I think what Adityabandhu's funeral, this order member that died, I think the vision for that, as compared to the vision for most funerals or most death or most change or most impermanence, is the fact that it's just kind of acknowledged that, okay, change does happen, impermanence is a fact, and we have to just look at that. And it's not that bleak, yeah. A friend of mine who's been diagnosed with cancer has been talking about, he's been interviewed, he's written a book, and he's been interviewed about his facing death, yeah. And just being in the same room as him and hearing about how he faces death, just with such positivity, I started to feel like, oh, actually, I don't have to be kind of afraid of it. I don't have to sit my head under the sand. There's probably more to it than I've kind of realised, yeah. So, yeah, as I said, Adityabandhu's funeral, my friend's, this guy's funeral, is kind of a blueprint to how we should look at impermanence, how we should look at change, yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's obviously high level, as in ultimately, yeah, that's the only thing we can be guaranteed of is to die. But we can also experience change just in our day-to-day. So we can experience change in our moods. We might have woken up in one mood today. We might have woken up really tired or annoyed or anxious or happy, joyful, relaxed. And then by the time we got to here, to the LBC, we might be in a completely different state. The fact that the things do change, the fact that we, for example, have bad moments means that we can have better moments. Yeah, that's just kind of the way things are. The fact that we are alive ultimately means that we do die. So change is everywhere, yeah? And I suppose what we can do to kind of come up against that a bit more, and hopefully we can kind of feel into this in meditation, is just in meditation we can watch change in our sensations, watch changes in the room. We can watch like sound, how it kind of changes. We can watch the breath, and we can, more importantly, can watch the kind of changingness of the breath, of our sensations. Yeah. What I mean by that is not the fact that things change, more the changingness. Yeah. So, for example, we might be hearing a humming sound coming from this room, from the air conditioning or something like that, if it's still on. I think it is, yeah. And then we might get distracted, and the noise in our mind might be louder for a minute or so. And then we can watch the changingness, the quality of the change, just the fact that it changes, or just the changingness of it, rather than, yes, it's changed. Rather than kind of marking it, just watching it, kind of like taking a little step back and watching it. So yeah, we can do that with sounds, as I said. We can do that with sensations. One of them is obviously, if we have pain, we can just watch the pain and watch it come and go. If we have an itch that we want to scratch, we can just watch we just feel the itch and then watch the changingness of it. Yeah? Or watch how our mind changes, because it's not just the thing itself changes, is our attention changes as well. So we might become distracted, and then our itch isn't so in our awareness, you see what I mean? And then again with the breath, we can watch the difference in maybe the shallowness of the breath, maybe it deepening, maybe the feeling of the breath, or whatever it's doing. You can just kind of watch how it changes, and watch our mind, the focus of our mind changing, and that itself is change, yeah. So I think maybe I'll go back a little bit. Actually, before that, maybe if you have any questions on, or any comments on maybe where you've seen impermanence or change in your life, and how that's affected you, or even how that surprised you. You see what I mean? Like I've talked about my experience and my friend's funeral, my grandma's funeral, and just noticing some things there. I just wonder if anyone's got any of their own kind of reflections on that, or online as well. If you do, Joe will read it out. Yeah, Brian.
I've got quite a lot of experience of death in my family. My brother, sister, mother, and father died in quite a small period of time, but it's always interesting. Because I meditated so long, when I went to see my brother, I was with him before he died, I was just in my body a lot, feeling the energy in the body. And when I went through the door, I saw him and the body was there, and I just had this instant knowing that he wasn't in the body.
Right, yeah.
And then the thought that came was, oh, he must be okay then.
Right, yeah.
And
I myself had cancer 2 years and a half ago. It was looking very bad and completely fine now. But because of the meditation, as I was waiting in the hospital to see the doctors, I had a bit of a heart problem, that revealed cancer. And because I've been meditating for so long, when the nurse gave me the thing, I was just overcome with concern for her, because she was suffering, because she was the one telling me. Could see the look, but because I've been meditating, I was fine. And the only thing that really happened was like, as I left, there was thoughts arising about, oh no, I want to do a lot of writing, I want to meditate more, I want to make more stuff in this life, I want to do more spiritual stuff and more writing. And I realised that it was just a thought pattern, and I just let it float by, and then everything was beautiful again. The sky was beautiful, my feet on the ground were beautiful, like I've been meditating. And my whole experience of that was, pleasant. I mean, when you go into the scanner, when you go into the operating theatre, it's all very beautiful, it's all very interesting, it's new. And so the whole experience was one of beauty. And I've seen this like with my brother who hadn't meditated before. When he knew he was going to die, one of the last things he said to me, this is from someone who's quite a violent man and very, gangster. And but when he was dying, all his thoughts of pain and suffering disappeared, and he was in a space of complete. He just thought, I wish I could have been like this my whole life. And he was just so full of kindness to everybody. And one of the last things he said to me was, never underestimate the value of sunlight on your skin. That's one of the last things. And he said, if you have another day alive, you want to go to a park. So I think the thing about death in my experience is a lot of people from the outside, like the biggest problem I had when I was ill was other people saying, oh, you must be more worried than you are, getting annoyed. So you have to deal with other people's, it's the view of death that is a real problem. Other people's view of death or your own view of death. But often, sometimes the person that you're worrying for is your own projection. But also, one other thing I'd say is, my view of is from my experience of meditation, seeing how people die, my view is, I don't think the truth is we die. I feel like the body dies. That's a good way of putting it. I feel like life's an adventure that will finish and make the most of it. But I haven't got a view about what happens next. So my view about death determines how you live. Right?
Sure. Yeah. Exactly.
What you're adding on to the fact you're going to die. And you're adding on to it. Something.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that.
Waffles.
No, sorry. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think there's a few really good things as well from what you said, like in a way the appreciation of life once you're a bit more aware of your own mortality, and hopefully it's not just your own mortality, isn't it? It's like once you're just a bit more aware generally, you can take in more of simplicity and the beauty of life, just take it in, because it's such a shame, isn't it, when we can only say things we want to people or act the way we want to when we know that things are about to end. I suppose that's another thing what you were saying about your brother's what was it, what I got was it there was something like if I knew my own mortality, then I would just try and, I don't know, I'll translate it as work on myself, work on my mind, work on my life.
Yeah, I mean, that was me. It's like, when I had that thing, it's like, the brief thoughts.
Yeah.
But actually, two things. One, my writing, because I write a lot and I want to make
Sure.
But also, and then the bigger thing was, I want to progress more spiritually.
Right, yeah.
And I'm not really, I'm running out of time. I realised those thoughts were not helpful.
Right, yeah.
And I just saw them pass. And when the thoughts passed, beauty was there anyway.
Yeah.
The sky was beautiful.
And we'll go through it.
Beautiful because of that experience.
Yeah.
But my experience wasn't panic.
And we'll go through it as well. And that's a good point, because we can use thoughts as well as sounds and sensations and the breath. But I'll say a bit more about that at the end, but I appreciate the contribution. Yep. You didn't have one? You wanted to say something earlier? No. It's all right. No? I'm just imagining people down. All right, I'll go on. Yeah, so, I mean, we can meditate for a little while, for maybe 15 minutes. Yeah, so before we do that, I'll just say, again, actually I'll read this out first, which is, I think, leads on from what Brian was saying quite well. To face death, so this is from the actual, this is the text that these Tibetans sort of reflect on. There's one text on each of the mind turnings, and I won't read all of it, and I'll just read the last part, which kind of pertains to the consequences of reflecting on impermanence. Yeah, so they say a lot about how one day I'm going to die and I can't avoid it, and life is unstable and impermanent, and my time of death is uncertain. And then towards the end he says, to face death I will need courage, forbearance, contentment and a clear conscience. I need to be free of regrets, and that means using my time wisely. All that will matter at the time of death is spiritual practice. What will matter is what I have become in myself, the qualities of my mind, and the sense of having lived a worthwhile life through helping others. So I should live with awareness of the inevitability of death and of its imminence. And I must make good use of my time through practicing the Dharma. So yeah, we can make good use of our time now. And what we'll do is, before we get into meditation, we'll just be with the breath, yeah? So we won't actually have a formal sit, or we won't do a formal practice, sorry. So we'll be with the breath and we'll watch these sensations of our body. So if pain arises, we can just watch the changingness, yeah? If tingling or wanting to scratch, we can just sit with it, watch it come and go, yeah? Watch the changingness. Again, the same with sound. Any sound in the room that comes and goes, any sound outside the room, any internal sound, we can just do the same. Yeah. So what tends to happen in this practice is we can just maintain a broad awareness, and then things arise and just watch those things. Yeah. So we don't need to go necessarily looking for pain, go looking for sound. Things will just arise itself. Yeah. So yeah, we can do that sensation, sound, and again the breath. We can just watch it changing, watch the quality of the breath changing, even how we breathe, the shallowness, the depth. Yeah? And we'll do that for 15 minutes, and then I'll say a little bit more before the end. So just feeling grounded, letting your weight drop into the cushions or into the chair. So as we just sit, just watching the sensations come and go, if they do, all the sounds. Or the breath. So just like clouds in the sky, watching them come and go. Without going towards them or pushing them away. Simply observing the impermanence in our moment-to-moment experience. So for the last few moments, just letting go of the practice and just sitting, absorbing the fruits of the practice. So what we can do for homework, if you like, is we can just do this at home. So if you have an existing practice, try and do this once a day, even if it's only for 5 minutes. So yeah, just watching sensation, sound, breath, and its changingness as it comes and goes. And if you're feeling really brave, you can watch your thoughts as well. Or to watch your thoughts, it's a bit more subtle, isn't it? They kind of sneak in, and you tend to not notice them come and go. But you can add that to the mix as well. Yeah. So, and if you don't have a daily practice, you can try just doing it. On a walk, you can just try and watch things as they pass, and watch sort of thoughts come and go, anything that's sort of going on internally, just kind of doing that. So you can do that on a walk as well. It doesn't have to be just in meditation. Sounds, if we're out and about, sounds, that sort of thing. And come and just kind of reflect on the positives, I think, of it. I don't know, for me, I just felt held everything a bit more lightly in that meditation. Didn't get so into it in a positive way, I think. So just, maybe we'll talk about that next week, all the benefits of it. But that's all we have time for. So thank you online, and thanks for coming.